Hey everybody, it's Mike Sullivan with Born to Shine. Today we have an awesome guest. His name is Michael Martucci, and he is the campus support coordinator over at Austin Independent School District in Austin, Texas. And Michael, thanks for being with us, man.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Mike.
And what was your journey like to become the campus support coordinator? That's a big role. You have people looking up to you for guidance, and what was your journey like?
Awesome. Thanks for asking. Well, yeah, I'm actually new to Austin, Texas, and Austin ISD. Yeah, I guess I started off really. I used to work in Los Angeles in film, and there was a lot of like yelling, and people acting very childish. So I figured, if I wanted to work with, people who are being childish, and I might as well go work in a school, right? So I quit. I work with instead of working with emotionally unintelligent adults, I figured it's perhaps better to support children and not being like that, right? So yeah, I became a substitute teacher in New York City, and I really, really enjoyed it. I connected with the kids.
Hmm.
Just being in the classroom is so rewarding. Watching kids grow, and I think I remember the administrator was like, "You have a knack for this," but what I think he meant by that is you don't send kids to the office, so like we you don't give us more work, so we appreciate that. And yeah, so I became a then I went and did like New York City teaching fellows, became a classroom teacher in New York City. Well, that was quite a while ago, probably 15 years ago. And yeah, I worked in inclusive programs in New York City. So doing co-teaching, we were like, one of the early states to kind of adopt those inclusive practices.
Hmm.
So I got a lot of good training and good work early in my career out in New York. Then I came over to California in Los Angeles, and then I started working for charter schools out there. So I worked for KIPP, LA for a couple years as a teacher, and then I became a special ed coordinator, I think it was, over there. And then I moved to become a director of student services at both environmental charter schools and Ingenium schools in LA, and I did that for the last 8 years. Then decided to relocate to Austin, join a bigger school district, kind of work on a team. It can get a little lonely in a director role, yeah, I was interested in working to build programs kind of as a team. So I moved over to Austin. Yeah, so that's kind of my education journey.
Cool. No, that's awesome. And a side note, were you an editor? What did you do in the film world? I'm just curious. Was it editing
Oh,
film or shooting or
actually,
lighting?
well, I worked in a post production company. We did
Yep.
like digital intermediates, which is like basically photo editing movies, more or less, like
Oh, cool.
photoshopping movies. And
Yeah.
I was kind of like a coordinator type person, just like moving the project along.
Very natural kind of transfer then, but same type of skills, just a different environment.
I think so. I think I think in education, there is a lot of transferable skills into other industries. And I often think like educators are maybe not always considered in a lot of industries and a lot of experience. I mean, I can't imagine a job more difficult than being a principal of a school. Like the amount of hats you have to wear, the things you
Right.
carry, the amount of emotional support you need to do for students and staff.
Right.
Like to me, like people like that could be president of the United States probably quite
Yeah.
easily. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. 100%. And when you were K-12, Michael, was there anything that you maybe struggled with? I mean, everybody has something, right? I struggled with
Mm-hmm.
anxiety, depression, and I was a third grader. There were big emotions in a little body. Was there anything that you maybe struggled with when you were a kiddo?
Yeah, I think, a lot. Um, I really struggled in school when I was a kid. When I always say, if I could only ask one question when hiring someone to work in a school, it would be, did you like school or not when you were a little kid? And if the answer is yes, I would probably not hire you. And if the answer is no, I would bring you onto my team. Um, yeah, I think it's just really important to have a critical lens as we're trying to deconstruct systems that are racist, don't work, for kids and our society. So I think that lens is important. When I was a kid, I used to get in a lot of trouble, um, like from even in the household too. But immediately when I hit school, I was I guess I had attention issues. Easily bored, didn't want to sit down, talk all the time, which is perhaps maybe a podcast is a good place for me to be. But yeah, so I was like highly distractible, and there wasn't really, there wasn't I a lot of teachers didn't have a heart for that. I would say when I was a kid, and it really
Mm.
affected my my psyche and my emotional well-being. I
Mhm.
would say, I always felt like I was like a bad kid. It still impacts me at 38 years old,
Mm.
in a lot of ways. So I think, basically not being able to toe the line in school, and having a lot of like compassionless teachers, um, really made things challenging for me. It led to some depression when I was in high school. Yeah, and I think, but ultimately, I think it motivated me to want to work in schools and be that teacher who, I think we don't realize sometimes in education that we can do a lot of damage to kids. Well-intentioned people do a lot of damage to kids. When I was a new teacher and didn't know how to teach well, I was hurting kids. So I think, um, yeah, I think it's important to just like realize the amount of impact that being taking the time to get to know your students, smiling at them, engaging in the type of constructive, restorative practices with them that you want to see them be as adults. I think it's super important, and those like subtle messages we send in school are so much more important than like the content, which like probably no one remembers anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it was really important part of my journey. I would say is just like my school experience, and just wanting to make school experience different, for kids now.
That's awesome. That's beautiful, Michael. And there's a common thread that I'm really blessed to hear from people like you that are devoting and dedicating your life for the betterment of our kids, right? To build them up, to support them, to edify them, to encourage them. And it's usually because we, you, me, superintendents, directors of curriculum, school psychologists, we've gone through some challenges, and those usually make the best teachers, the best principals, the best soups, because we've experienced things that strengthen that empathy and that kindness muscle within us, right? And so that's just awesome. I really appreciate that share, and I'm sure our viewers and listeners are going to be inspired by that. And that's really cool. So thank you for sharing that. And
Thank you.
what have you noticed? Yeah, no, thank you. And what have you noticed? Because you said you're pretty new at Austin, maybe in the past schools that you've worked at, one of which I think in Highland Park, California, you were saying was a charter
Mhm.
school, or just any of the schools you've been at. Have you noticed certain strategies or tools that they had in place to support their kiddos with their emotional and mental well-being? Or was there maybe a lack of, and you would hoped, wow, it would have been great to have some extra resources, or
Mhm.
what worked well? Just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Uh, I I want to start by saying like it makes me think about budgeting, and I think budgets are statements of the ethics and morals of like an organization, right? And you put your money where your mouth is as an organization when you invest in mental health.
Yeah.
So I think it's and mental health resources and be constantly getting feedback and changing them and making them better for your students, staff, families, right? I think to me that's the most important. You can write stuff on the wall, that says you believe in what you believe in, but you have to actually put the work in, get the quality staff that can be there for your kids, And I think to me, the schools that have the strongest culture, around like staff retention and just bringing in quality folks, to work with the kids and work with the staff and work with, I think is the most important, if that makes sense. So
Mhm.
being able to
Absolutely.
have the resources,
Right.
and as a leader, being brave enough to go and get those resources for your kids. I think as a director, right, or a superintendent of special ed mental health, it's your job to go to your superintendent and demand the resources that your kids and families need, right? And I think
Yeah.
and at the school site level, right, I think it's so important to plan our whole everything we do in school around things like that, right? Like around the resources and supports for our kids who need them, whether it's kids with mental health needs, special education needs,
Hmm.
socioeconomic needs, any kind of need. Design the schedule, design the structures of the school to meet those needs first, right? And then let the other pieces trickle in,
Yep.
if that makes sense. And I think in
That does.
organizations that I've seen be the most successful are the ones who not only have the drive, right, and the mission, but also put the resources and supports behind that. So I think to me, yeah, I think that's the most important thing, in terms of being able to really create strong programs, whether it be for mental health, special ed. So yeah, and I think I hope our leaders, really work to do that.
Oh, that's great. Absolutely. It makes perfect sense. And then if there are any, in your experience of working with kids and working with different districts, are there any final thoughts or words of wisdom or maybe encouragement that you'd like to share if there's another administrator listening or a parent or even a student, whatever's on your heart, man?
I guess like two things maybe came to mind when I was reflecting on this. First is like this work is really difficult, and like hang in there, to everyone listening, because the victories maybe are small, and sometimes we take a lot of steps backward before we move forward. Hang in there. And then my second piece of advice would be work to create community. We have within our schools, work with our families. We have to get all on the same team and all on the same page. I've seen too many places where there's hostile between district, school, teachers, administration,
Mm,
parents, school. Like we need to break down all those barriers to really be able to serve our kids. And I think those like false kind of political narratives are really destructive. So I think really working to create community, and then hanging in there when it gets tough, because this work is tough. And I want to thank everyone. It's the holidays, so I hope everyone gets some time off and rejuvenates, and then comes back and really works to support our kids' needs.
amen to that. Thank you so much, Michael Martucci. Appreciate having you, man.
Thank you, Mike.